Okay. So a lot of times when we do a talk, we bring a koan. Tonight's koan comes from a collection called the Blue Cliff Record. It's case 25. And one of the ways that, and then we talk about koans is we say that they're dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. And so when we listen to a Dharma talk, one of the ways we can approach it is sort of listen with the heart rather than trying to intellectually figure it out. And then at the end, there'll be time for questions if you want to do some figuring. So case 25 is called the Hermit's Staff. The Hermit of Lotus Flower Peak held up his staff to a group and said, "When the ancients got here, why wouldn't they stay?" No one spoke, so he answered himself, "Because they did not gain power on the road." He also said, "What about the ultimate?" Again, he himself replied, "With my staff across my shoulder, minding no one, I go straight into the Myriad Peaks." When the ancients got here, why didn't they stay? What are they talking about? So, I'm sort of imagining there's a hermit, right, up in the mountains, and obviously some Zen students have gathered and are asking questions, and he's testing them, and they don't know what to say, and so he answers himself. So the first thing we got to look at is well, where is it that we're getting? Right? When the hermits got here, why didn't they, or when the ancients got here, why didn't they stay? Well, when we start talking about ancients in spiritual texts, usually the ancients are someone that we're admiring, looking up to, previous enlightened masters, something like that, right? The ancients got here, why didn't they stay? When you got your PhD, why didn't you stay a student? When you got the job, why didn't you feel happy all the time? Right? When the ancients got here, there's a couple ways we can look at this here. Right? One of them, the way I like to look at it, is when the ancients got here. A lot of the practice is about being right here. Right? If you can really be here, that's attainment. You've attained something. From another point of view, you haven't attained anything, but we talk in Zen about the relative and the absolute, right? The relative is, all the stuff, death and taxes, your car, job, relationships, clothes, I feel sick, I feel well, the relative, all the ingredients of our life. The absolute is oneness, unity, nothing separate, all emptiness, everything returning to the one. Nothing with any fixed characteristic, the Buddha nature. Right? So when we experience the Buddha nature, when we experience the dropping away of body and mind, when we experience the absolute, why not stay? Let's stay. Come to the absolute. We have cookies. Right? Actually, cookies would be relative. But there's a trap. So when I look at the hermit, I think, obviously the hermit is an advanced practitioner, probably talking to a group of monks, right? Other advanced practitioners. Maybe they just got done meditating in a beautiful, scenic mountain environment. When the ancients got here, why didn't they stay? Because they did not gain power on the road, right? What's the road? The path of Zen. They did not gain power on the path of Zen. So what's the point? Why bother at all? Why are we all gathered here in this quiet room on a Thursday night, listening to some guy in a laundry hamper full of robes talk about hermits from hundreds or thousands of years ago? What's the point of all of this? We don't gain power because we don't gain anything by doing this. We already have it. We already have it, right? We already have the Buddha nature. We are already not fixed. And when we experience that, we don't stay. And the funny part is, there's a lot of admonitions in Zen to not stay in the oneness state, right? You have to go be of benefit to the world. Like, don't go hide in your, wonderful meditative samadhi place. But my experience consistently is that even if I try to do that, it doesn't work, right? No matter what spiritual state you're in, life comes back in through the back door and is like, hey, excuse me, how's it going? Dishes in the sink, cat litter box needs to be changed, bills need to be paid, stuff's happening. And I've never met anyone, even people who live in monasteries and spiritual communities and stuff, then it's like the roof is leaking, the retreat participants are out of coffee, there's one of the powers you don't gain on the road to enlightenment is the ability to prevent life from continuing to have all of the characteristics of life. And so the purpose of this must be something else, right? The purpose must be something other than achieving a particular place that makes everything better. So then he says, what about the ultimate? So he's kind of already giving them part of the answer here, right? The ultimate, the absolute, the final attainment. And he says, with my staff across my shoulder, minding no one, I go straight into the Myriad Peaks. The Myriad Peaks, minding no one. There's another koan where the teacher talks to himself and he says, do not be deceived by others. And he says, I won't. Right? Minding no one. What's your life like if you really are minding no one, right? You're not paying attention, or at least you're not being driven by, hopefully you're paying attention to what comes up, but you're not being driven by the versions of yourself, right? I want to be a good husband, father, employee, teacher, all these stories, all these projections. So I'm not going to pay attention to that. But also, what about everyone else that I need to impress? Right? Minding no one. I want to talk about freedom, right? Then what? Well, then the Myriad Peaks. The peaks and valleys of life. We really don't gain power on the road. We really don't get to skip the peaks and valleys of life. The reason we do this is the opposite of gaining power, right? It's not gaining things, it's letting things fall away. Because when body and mind drops away, what's left? Nothing but the Myriad Peaks. Nothing but the road. When body and mind drop away, you don't cease to exist. You don't go off into some bliss state and clearly, why didn't they stay? They didn't stay. Sometimes people will come to Daishan and they'll have had some kind of opening or, profound and deep experience, which is awesome. I'm for that, right? But then a lot of times they'll be like, and then it went away. How do I get it back? I have to, it's kind of like giving someone the bad news about, they thought they had a baseball card that was, come to the pawn shop with a Mickey Mantle baseball card only to find out it was a reprint, right? I think it's worth $10,000. It's worth 40 cents. I did it. I got enlightenment. How do I keep it? It's like, well, you don't get it, right? Not that you don't get it, like you don't understand, but it's not achieved, right? You already have it. So that's what I want for each person in this room, right? Is that you're free to travel the myriad peaks of your life unencumbered by preconceptions, stories, judgments of yourself, judgments of others. And the way you are unencumbered by those things is by watching them come up, accepting and letting them go. Right? We release things with our awareness, not with our denial. It's a strange alchemy. Right? Whatever you become aware of will dissolve in the light of your awareness eventually. Right? If you become aware of grief, you'll start crying, and then eventually the tears will be spent. Right? If you become aware of your bad habits, then you'll start to have emotional concerns about the bad habits when you engage in them. If you become aware that you're not taking good care of yourself and you need to draw a boundary, now when that situation arises, you'll think about the boundary. Right? Everything dissolves in the light of our awareness, and what's left is nothing but myriad peaks. And so then the question is just, how do I skillfully navigate this life? Well, with compassion, with gentleness, with assertiveness, in truth. It's challenging. So the monks really, or the hermit's really throwing down the gauntlet here. Because what he's saying is, there's no finish line. You can't stay. Get back to your life. I have a friend who is a Benedictine monk. And Benedictine monks follow something called the Rule of Benedict, which is a little thin book of like rules for monastic life. And he's Brazilian, and he, I don't know how much you guys know about sort of Brazilian cultural temperament, but he's absolutely hilarious, and his sense of humor is fairly dark. And one of the things that he will say is, well, here's my summary of the rule of Benedict. Sit down, shut up, it's not about you, get back to work. It's a little harsh, right? But, we kind of have, spiritual nerd-based friendship. And I get it, right? Sit down on the cushion, right? Get quiet. Or in his case, go into contemplative prayer, right? Go into contemplation, go into Zen, go into the moment. Sit down, be quiet. It's not about you. Don't use meditation as a way to work on the project of you, right? Use meditation as a way to watch the yous that you think you are pass by. It took me years to figure that out, right? That the task wasn't to sit here and keep fixing everything. It's like somebody who has, I had a buddy who was an anesthesiologist, and he loved to work on cars. And he would buy these absolute rust heaps. Like he'd buy an MG that was nothing but a rusted body and like no engine. And he would build it until it looked like it came down to the stickers. It was like off the showroom floor, brand new looking. And then he'd sell it immediately. Like he'd drive it like twice and then gone. And he'd start doing another one, right? That was like his passion. And great. Nothing against, you want to be a car person and rebuild cars, have fun. That's not a problem. But don't do that with your mind, right? Don't always find, you're perfect and complete, lacking nothing, so stop trying to fix the car, right? Watch the notions that you're anything else go by. Come back to this present moment, because it's all there is. It's all that exists. It's all there is. So sit down. Be quiet. It's not about you. And it's not about anyone else. Then get back to work. What work? Walking through the myriad peaks, trying to be of benefit to all beings. Because here's the funny thing, if it's not about you and it's not about anyone else, then it's only about all of us.